And we are live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Gathering ParaCast. My name is Stephanie.
And I'm Heidi, and we are definitely happy to be here around our own metaphysical tables tonight.
Yes.
We're not
Yes.
at the metaphysical table because we're not at the studio.
It feels so strange, Heidi, because
It
we
is
have
weird.
been, for like the last, I don't know, several months, we have been making an effort to be there every week. And then
Yep.
this week, sickness kind of invaded our lives. So,
Yeah.
my life. And then
Well,
sounds like
yeah.
you too.
Well, I've got this weird cough, I think, from lack of humidity.
Yes.
That is just, I don't know where it's come. Anyway, I feel fine, but well, if you're not feeling good, let's just try it from home. So this is the first time we've been at home.
I know. It feels
Yeah.
weird. It feels
It is
weird.
weird. It is weird.
Yeah.
But it's
So
okay. It's good to
it
try
is
something
okay.
new.
It is okay. And it's good to find out that, hey, we can actually do it. I have these 3 wild cats running around. So, you may see them, one or the other, or all 3 at some point, but no controlling them.
Well, my dogs are upstairs. They're stuck behind a door, so they're not going to be joining us tonight, but
There you go.
that's okay. You never
yeah.
know. I have a ghost here that you guys might hear. It's happened
Yeah.
before where someone has heard
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
someone
That would be
talking
very
through
cool.
my mic.
Mhm. That
We'll
would be
see.
cool, wouldn't it?
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Oh my gosh. So what kind of a deck do you have? We'll pull a card from before we introduce our guest.
Yes, absolutely, because I'm excited to get to our guest tonight. But I decided to bring out the Urban Crow Oracle.
Ooh, I love it.
It's Crow is one of my power animals and has been forever. And I talk to the crows a lot. They are out in the yard a lot, and actually down at my studio, I see the crow a lot. And they're such a good messenger for me and like companion. And I see them. If I see one, I'm going to see 1,000 of them, and they come. They just come all the time for me, no matter what's going on. So I always go outside and talk to them and thank them for being around and just being a part of my journey. So this is the Urban Crow Oracle. I haven't actually worked with this one yet. I've had it for a while and I've just started working with it. This is actually by one of the authors of other tarot decks and oracle decks that I just love. And it's just, I love her artwork and I love her messages in the books that come with it. So anyway, this is MJ Cullinan, I think is how I'm saying her name. Yeah, I've worked
stuff before. Yeah.
Yes, I love her work. And so anyone out there, if you're wanting to try this, please support her work. She's fabulous. Okay. So I've got the deck. I did some shuffling before the show. I'm shuffling again. I can't see the cards. You guys can see them as I shuffle a little bit. Okay. But I'll pick off the top anyway. So you just let me know when you want to pick a card. And this will be for anyone listening, however you want to accept this into your life or not. It's up to you. But we'll see what shows up this week.
Okay. I think right now.
Okay. So off the top, here we go. Set those aside. And this is, number 28, which is luck.
Luck. Oh, see?
Who could use some of that? That would be.
We could. Yes.
Me, you, anyone. So luck, and it just shows this for those that are listening only. It's a beautiful crow that's lifting its mouth upward, and there's fish. Actually, I thought it was feathers at first, but there's fish flying all over. And I think the crow is just like, wow, look at all these fish just ready to fly down into my mouth. Isn't that lucky? So I would say that is lucky for the crow.
Absolutely.
Let's see. I'm just going to get a little bit more detail here from the book. And I won't read the whole thing, but it says, it's a happy day for the crow who finds fish raining from the sky. Something good is coming. Be sure to position yourself into a place that will yield the best results. And there's more, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Because that sounds good.
I like it. That's very good.
Little luck for everyone today, for you, whatever that means for you, however you want to interpret it. There you go.
Yeah. I love it.
So there's our card.
So there's the card pulled this week. So we have a very special guest on tonight, and he's a very active member of Cryptovania. So welcome, Leon Briggs to the Gathering ParaCast.
Eu esqueci no Google.
That's wonderful to be here.
Thank you. Now,
It's great to have you.
yes, it is. It is. Now we understand that you are a member of the Seneca tribe. So tell us, just tell us a little bit about yourself, I guess, so that people who aren't familiar with you understand or, kind of get to know you.
Yeah, I'm from the Tonawanda Seneca, and I'm Hawk Clan. Our territory is upstate New York, up on the U.S. Canadian border. So we're the farthest north and west. So they call us the keepers of the Western Door. And so we're part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. A lot of people call it Iroquois. Well, we don't use that word because it's one used by the government and others, but it's a kind of a derogatory comment. Where I live is we're the smallest of the Solvent nations. In Tonawanda is the smallest of the three Seneca territories. And we have Allegheny, which is the most southern in New York, right on the southern tier in be just north in the New York from Warren, Pennsylvania. Then Cattaraugus, which is up by Irving, New York, and then Tonawanda. So where I come from, we're the foundation of the Great Law of Peace. Everything starts there. So when we're doing our ceremonies, everything starts in Tonawanda and then goes around the rest of the Confederacy. And so it travels the sun. So it goes from sun up to sundown.
Very cool.
Wow.
Very cool. So we understand that you have had some pretty wild experiences with Birdman and things like that. So tell us about Birdman, because, we've had some sightings of what we would call a Birdman right here in Minnesota too. So tell us what you've seen.
The one I was talking to Jason, and it was back. It would have been May in 2022, and this is kind of a rough drawing I did sitting along the road. But this bird was big. I mean, it was easily 3 times the size of what a turkey buzzard was. And when I seen it, I looked and I could tell that it wasn't a normal bird of prey, because for one, its feathers were very ruffled. Even the pointing feathers, tail feathers, nothing was smooth about it. It wasn't like it would look like to see some of the ones that they make out of artificial materials. And I was driving, I got to slow down. There was vehicles behind me, but I got to see it easily for a good 10, 15 seconds, and to be able to see see good detail and stuff of it. I talked to a couple other people that had kind of seen something about the same, and about a year or so after that, I seen pretty much about the same thing flying, and where it was flying, and when it's going down the creek, I could tell it was easily 12 foot wide, and just
wow.
Yeah.
watching it fly down the creek and being able to look at the creek bed and water and watching it go through. But it didn't fly like a condor, but it didn't fly like an eagle or any birds of prey. It was more, I guess its motions were more like an albatross, the way it rolled itself instead of tipping its wings. But one of the things I noticed, that his eyes were so big, almost like an owl, but they were like a cat's eye.
Oh.
And that's it. I mean, and I could see that. And I was probably, less than 40 yards from him. And so I went down and when I let traffic pass, and I turned around and came back. When I found a turnaround spot and I found where the tree was and walked around there and stuff. And then, but I didn't see him back. And it was probably, I would say probably 10 or 15 minutes before I could get, back to turn around in there. And, but it was pretty unique. And in the medicine societies that we belong to on the reservation, it's a lot of our traditional belief, is is in parts of animals. And I know even I was telling Jason time one time when I was up in northern Quebec at my place up there, and this is 62 miles from Alaska, up on the tip of the James Bay, and through one of the small lakes there. I mean, I could say it was a Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever, but I couldn't. I could see it was moving on two legs through the far part of the lake, and when I paddled over to where it was, I could see the height where I looked at it when it was passing the trees. But when I put my paddle in the ground by the log where he was coming through, that was still wet. I had a 6-foot paddle and I could touch the bottom, and he was still standing, most of 4 foot out of the water.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
And so some of the things that we've seen up there, when we had our dog teams out, I mean, and the dogs would sense stuff, and they would just stop, and they would just start not howling or anything. They were just yipping and stuff, and just kind of more getting together because they could sense something was around. And a lot of times, we'd see that if there was big cats around or big bears.
Sure.
But some of the times, we've noticed a number of these different, I guess you just call them cryptids, that have showed up, and I've been fortunate that I've been able to go to other countries and listen to some of the stories from the indigenous people and stuff of some of the things they see, some of the things that they have many times looked at. And a lot of times we get to talking about how we consider them more transitional, that we would say they can walk between worlds.
Yes.
And when they're entering between two different worlds is probably when people see them, when they appear.
Yeah, I think so too.
Wow.
But those are just a couple ones. And but I've been to many different places. I was over to Ohio this last summer and at the Serpent Mound, and I was talking to some of the people that were there, the natives that come to the one get together we had, and they've talked about sightings of Birdman and some of the other cat type cryptids that they've seen around there.
So Trost is saying when you saw the Birdman, that was really close to Cryptovania headquarters. Is that right?
It was probably the other side of town.
Okay, but close.
Right.
But close. Now, have you ever seen him again, or was it just that one time? And then
the second time, like I said, when it was flying down through the creek, and I knew that because just by seeing the feathers and stuff of it, even though it was tapering the opposite direction, I could tell that it was the same bird because of the coarseness of its feathers.
Yeah.
And it was almost, I would say, it kind of like the feathers were almost like an ostrich feather, that they weren't fine. It was brushy.
Interesting. That is so cool. That is so cool. I know Heidi and I have said we're going to go down to the river. So both my daughter and Jerry, my ex-husband, have seen this creature it's down by the river here in Minneapolis, which is all protected, right? It comes through the cities, but it's all protected land. And oddly enough, it's over by the airport, which is unusual, but hey, snowy owls are there now too. So I guess maybe not, but we have said, we're going to go on a field trip and go over there and see if we can see them too. But
as soon as it's warm enough.
As soon as it's warm enough.
Yeah, I've known I belong to the American Indian movement, and we have an area just part of Pipestone. And we've been up there a number of times, and we've seen things at night and early morning that, a lot of people standing around, 15, 20 people looking, and everybody's kind of just not saying anything, just trying to figure out what
it is.
watch is.
There's a lot of weird things down in that part of the state for sure, So, but there are up northern Minnesota too. Anytime you get away from the big cities, I think there's all kinds of unusual things, that are there. So tell us about your work with eagles and do you count them, or what is your work? Because we talk about eagles on this show a lot.
I work with eagles a lot. A lot of times, unfortunately, is when they're dead, because I do work in handling eagles for the Bald Eagle Repository. Then people will get orders in, other natives, and I'll be doing the processing and teaching them how to take care of the bird, to take it apart, to use it, what parts of stuff we're using for ceremonies and doing everything. But I have had a couple chances to be involved in rehab with with eagles, and at one time was able to let one sit on my arm as we released it.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's
around
cool.
around Pennsylvania, in New York, I travel a lot, and I kind of oversee where a number of the eagles' nests and stuff are. So I'll watch them, and what I do is, I just go and I do pipe ceremonies and stuff for them, just kind of watch, make in. I know that there's some places that got cameras and stuff on them around here, and so to be able to look at some of them, and then talk to some of the Fish and Wildlife Commission people and stuff that are monitoring them, in the Game Commission. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years, we've had farmers, that have shot them. Because they're afraid they're going to get their chickens.
Oh, come on!
And I'm like, well, chickens got to eat too.
So do they prosecute them? Because they would prosecute them here in Minnesota, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the eagles are sacred animals.
Yeah, they get real strict about them, and they're real protective. A number of times at the wildlife refuge, at some of the different wildlife refuges, I'll go and I'll do programs and stuff on them, and I'll have some of the eagle parts of stuff that I have that I use for ceremony, and then people are able to see like an eagle's head up close, that have for an eagle staff, and actually be able to see the size of their feet, that they're the size of my hand.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, they're big for sure. Well, that is really so. Okay, we talk about cryptids. From what I understand, well, you guys have a big mythological richness, and in there is a lot of creatures that could be cryptids. Would you like to talk a little bit? Do you have a Bigfoot? Is there? You've talked about Bigfoot. Now, does the Seneca tribe have a name for Bigfoot? Like here in Minnesota, the Ojibwa call him Gitchisadi. What do you call him?
One of the names that I hear a lot, that it's kind of I guess it's kind of a figurative name, Ishkanget. And I asked the gentleman one time, and he says, it's kind of like Ishkan, get out of here. He says that's how he explains it. He says, but it's he says it's just kind of an old word, kind of like you would have like a slang word. And but we do have stories about Bigfoots, and quite a few of the different, I know, like we were talking earlier about, some of the, some of the bear stories, because a lot of our medicine comes from like the little people and stuff, and given into the stories of the through the bear medicine, and how it was given to the Bear Clan to oversee. And so there's a lot of different stories there with, people seeing little people in through some of the ceremonies, and even being in the woods and the water when they were sick.
Wow.
So there's a lot of stories, of the little people.
Yeah.
And it's, you look at them, and people are like, they're, they're midgets or this. Well, I was able to do a reburial over in the Metroplex park in just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. This was probably 8 years ago. It was pre-COVID, and one of the universities there actually had about 40 sets of remains that were in boxes.
Of little people?
Of people of different sizes.
Okay.
And one of the boxes, it was like written on it like Giganticus or something like that. And it was a bigger box. Well, there was 2 femur bones in there that were, almost 3 foot long.
Wow, that's giant size.
Right. So they said that in the notes of stuff that the archaeologists and the anthropologists had in the boxes, said that this man would have been in his mid-30s and would have to be somewhere between 8 and 9 feet tall.
Well,
but in some of those other ones that we had there with it, and that were separated like this box was, there was 3 sets of remains that were pristine. And when we looked at them, when we were taking them out of the boxes with and placing them ready for burial, there was 2 female and 1 male. The male was, they figured from the notes, 14, 15 years old, 26 inches full, and no dwarfism. The females were 22 to 24, and they were both older, in their 20s, and they said that because of the pelvises being broken and rehealed, that they had both were mature and had children.
Wow.
So when we were looking at that and going through all the documentation, and I had talked to a couple other archaeologists, and they were telling me about some of the places that they found others like these. And they said that, then one guy gave me information and stuff from the Serpent Mound and one of the archaeological digs and stuff they did down there. And they were finding large, 8 to 10 foot skeletons.
Oh my gosh.
Well, if you've ever studied physical anthropology, they do go through the various stages of humankind, and one of them is some of them were really big, right?
Yep.
I don't remember what their names were now. It's been a lot of years since I studied that, but it's quite fascinating, So maybe that's what you're finding. But okay, now when we talk about little people too, what about the little people that are, of the other worldly, the other dimension? Do you have any stories about them? Because I have seen them here in Minnesota in the woods.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yep.
Well, a lot of times, people will see, they'll talk about leaves moving or something like that and think it's a squirrel. Well, there's a lot of times, you'll see things. And I've seen, pictures of footprints and stuff that, and they just they're 2-3 footprints, and they should have followed the rest of the mud, and they just disappear.
Yeah. Just like big footprints.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
But we've seen a lot, and we believe that they're here, and that's part of one of the teachings and stuff is their transition and how they come and how they speak to us and how they work through the medicine and how they teach us about the medicine. So when we're out, and that's one of the things that we do is we give a gift of Oyankwa, or our traditional tobacco, for them, in the spirit world, in what we call the great mystery, and those of all the unknowing, because it's like people say, well, things can't be true unless it's on Facebook, but and it's the same. But you just kind of laugh at things like that. Well, then you've got the scientists as well. They have to prove it by science. Well, there's been a lot of proof by science, but then a lot of the scientists, don't want to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see, some of um, these little entities that literally appear, in photographs, after photographs have been taken,
Yeah.
and people say, well, it wasn't there when they originally looked at it, and then they be flipping through their their photo album, and next thing you know, they're looking at this this little person that just appeared in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, a lot of times, they're there,
Mm-hmm.
and they've always been there. And the one lady said when she seen it, she watched it, and she says her daughters looked at it and everything else, and then they took and it just disappeared. So then it was not in the pictures anymore, and then they were like, well, we didn't open it, we didn't move it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Wow.
it's like with our with our false faces and some of our masks that we wear. I've heard people in museums say they could hear them or they'll see them move, and they're in a closed, sealed case. But we believe that medicine from the tree, in that spirit of that tree, and
Mm-hmm.
is always there.
Mm-hmm.
So when we try to get those back, and some fortunately we're able to get some of them back. Unfortunately, we can't. There's some that we don't get back. Collectors keep, and but when you look at them, there's a lot of variation, and then we make little masks, to represent,
Mm-hmm.
both parts of what's the seen and what's unseen.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Wow. I remember I went up north one time. We were doing a clearing for a gentleman in his house. He had a lot going on, and he was near the Red Lake Reservation.
Mm-hmm.
And we get up there, and I just remember seeing in the trees. I thought and this was a long time ago. I thought I must be something's wrong with me because I saw all these people standing in the trees, and they were about 2 feet tall, and they were everywhere, watching, like surrounding this whole house, that he was in, and he was out in the woods. And I thought, this is what is happening. And my husband could see him. We weren't married at the time, but he could see him, and nobody else could see him. But they were just standing up in the trees, just watching us the whole time we were up there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do
Yeah.
you think that they were there, for a teaching for you?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't thought about it. I mean, I've thought about seeing them, but I still didn't know why they were there. I guess I haven't thought about that way either. I guess it's possible.
Yeah, because one of the things that we teach is when these things appear to you, to look around, see what's around the surroundings, see where they're at, what they're doing, how they're moving, and because a lot of times we believe that they can be bringing messages or bringing medicine from the other side,
Mm-hmm.
or they might be there to look over you. I mean, how many times have you've heard little children sitting in a room talking to somebody that's not there,
Right.
and but we believe because the children are still pure, that they haven't been tainted, that a lot of these ghosts, aberrations, whatever you want to call them, will come to them, and a lot of times, the children aren't afraid, because it doesn't scare them, because they're understanding, because they're having conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oops. Moving a little bit too much. Yeah. Because they are special. And sometimes when you see them, you see them out of the kind of like the corner of your eyes, and it's like little sparkly things, and I know Chief Breon has mentored me in this, and he has told me, when you think you see a Bigfoot or a little person and you see these like glowing edges, look at them with your peripheral vision, and then you'll be able to see the whole. Do you agree?
Right. And a lot of times, if you just close your eyes,
That yes.
and you just try to look through your it just kind of sense, you'll be able to pick up what's there and the motion and everything.
Yep. Yeah.
And,
No.
and
Cool.
because of that, in the spirit is omniscient. It knows everything. And we're just children. We're just little children learning as we go. It's like when we're doing our ceremonies, when you learn and you teach as the way we do, as that is more hands-on, that our stories are passed down, from one person to another. And then, they teach the translations, they teach, why we use the stories and why we keep telling them, and why we need to practice to make sure that the story is told right the first time. And I would be explaining to young kids, and play, that what they call the telephone game, where you tell one person and then what you get at the end, and and then they realize, that how much of a different was just, in that 5 minutes it took from the first person to the last person.
Absolutely. So one of the other things that Tros was talking about is hellhound encounters. What have you heard about hellhounds? That's something very interesting, because I haven't heard about any of those in Minnesota. But
no, we haven't. I haven't seen any here. We haven't heard of any sightings here. Nothing like that.
I know people in northern Minnesota that have seen and talk about them. Then even up in Michigan, up in the northern points.
So are they dogmen? Are they dogmen?
They're we call them Wasatch Jack, which is it's a dog figure with a human face.
Okay.
And it is taught there's 3 or 4 different stories about it, but most of it all starts as a hunter that doesn't respect what he's hunting, that he just just kind of like a trophy hunter, just kills things just to kill. And so in our traditional teachings of using everything, and everything has its purpose, that is our traditional way of life. And so if you're going to hunt an animal, use everything, use the bones, use the skin, use the meat. We even use the entrails, and using everything for different things. That's kind of like, I'll tell kids, well, this is like going to Walmart. I said, instead of everything being on the shelf, it's all encased in one, and you just have to spread it out on the shelf. So when you're teaching them how to process an animal, to use the skin, to use the claws, to use the skull, and making sure that you give everything in respect, and then giving it tobacco, for it giving it its life. And so when you look at that, that's kind of the foundation of that teaching. So there's been, I've seen them in the north, and they would be crossing, and then you would just catch a glimpse. You would think it's a dog, or a coyote or something going across the road, and then you would just catch a glimpse, just part of the face. And
I have not heard of that. But okay, so tell me this. So one of the things that I have heard, and it still haunts me to this day, is because we're in paranormal and cryptid research and stuff. And this guy told me one time that he saw this bird-like creature up on a branch out in the woods, and it was like about the size of an owl, but when it turned to look at them, it had a human face.
Right.
Have you heard of that? So this kind of sounds like that, except it's on a dog body.
Right. Well, I've heard people, and then they talk about both. They talk about the birds of transition, and those birds of transition are sometimes people that have been stuck between those, and they might have been ascending, to be part of the bird nation, and just didn't make it. And I've seen up on Bear Island, for the Bear Island, and they were talking about it, of seeing, the snowy owls and stuff when they coming back to the hardwoods, and that's a traditional talk. But one of the other things that we talk about, is like down here, probably 3 weeks ago, you were talking about the crows and stuff. We had a murder on top of one of the buildings, and there was probably easily 12,000 crows there.
Oh my gosh.
And,
Wow.
and people just stopped and watched, and people were taking videos, but they could hear all of the sounds and everything. One of the guys from Cockerton, Pennsylvania, he does some cryptid stuff, and he actually did some recordings and said you can almost sound like, they were talking about how everything's supposed to go, where things were going. And he was trying to get rid of, now he's trying to get rid of the street noise to see, if he could hear more on those, and find out, and then he had talked to some of the people from the wildlife, Fish and Wildlife and Fish and Game, and they said, well, they've seen a few hundred in different places, but nothing. And I mean, the building that they were on is most of 300 foot long.
Wow.
And covered with snow, and there was you could tell that there was very little snow. And I mean, we watched them for 5-10 minutes.
Wow.
And then they would take off, and they would move thousands of them at a time.
Wow.
And then land right back.
So what do you think that meant? What do you think that meant, Leon?
Well, when we talk about the crows, and in just getting ready now, to start, start tapping trees. So in our traditional teaching about the trees and tapping and stuff, when the crows start heading south, and then when the crows head south, and then, when they come back, especially like when they're heading back into the north, into Michigan, up into Canada, that's when they start reducing their syrup production. They know that it's going to start to turn there, and they say the crows are the first ones to come to reap the benefits, and because they come to gather the first buds. So when they know when the crows come back, that it's time to switch, to protect the trees instead of keep tapping.
Wow.
Very cool. Very cool.
I have another question though about that Birdman creature you talked about. It was maybe someone ascending and they got stuck. Now, does that mean they're stuck forever, or just temporary?
No, one of the things that they there are different songs in there. They call, a lot of times people call them calling songs. So when they're out in, like, after a funeral and stuff like that, a lot of people will go out in the woods walking and stuff, and then sing at night, because they want to make sure that their friends, their loved ones, whoever passed on, knows that we're still here, we're still praying for them. And so a lot of times, what happens is, you'll get people, that had entered it in, it says, a lot of people will say it's like your spirit animal. You'll transition to your spirit animal, when you're leaving this earth.
Oh,
because
really?
When you get into the next world, you start that rotation again. And so it's like, we talk about, like, with Sage Jack, that he came back, he abused the animals and stuff, and so he came back as an animal, and so that a hunter could hunt him or trap him or whatever. So then, but that was his punishment. And so when you're looking at this transition of these animals, by with people's spirit animals, that's a lot of times what you see, and you'll see a lot of people talking about, songs, talking about stories, or hear something in the wind, after,
Mm-hmm.
when somebody,
Mm-hmm.
about the same time somebody passed away.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you can hear something whisper, and then you're looking and there's nobody there.
Yeah. Wow.
Cool.
So there's a lot, in those transitions between the physical and the spiritual, that ascension, that we're still here. We might
Mm-hmm.
leave the physical body, and then we're ascending, to take that next step, on your circle of life.
Mm-hmm.
It is said that every person goes through life and comes back, as a bird, as an animal, as come back as a fish.
Yeah.
Even in a lot of teachings, in the creation stories, people talk about, coming from the mud, coming from the earth, coming from this, this water bird ascended, which became their people.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of the traditional teachings, you'll see a lot of stories that will talk about, that heredity of, where they came from and where they're going.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, this is very cool.
I know.
love
I just keep thinking about.
I know, right? So see, we're hard pressed now because our minds are going like this.
Well, one of the I know a guy. I met him once I was up in New York, and we were over by the Great Lakes, and he was with a group that came to over by Tonawanda, and he came to the Genesee home, and people talk about all the hauntings and stuff that's there. That's where the first lobotomies were done, science lobotomy, but it was done on Native people. And at the end, it was called when it first started, it was like a home for idiots. So
Yeah.
they were taking all of the people that had problems and stuff, and so now, you get a lot of I've seen some of the ghost hunter programs and stuff going in there, and some of the things that happened. But one of the guys that was there, he talks about seeing this dogman looking through a door at him, and he says they were trying to catch the face, and he said they could actually, when they went back through, he says they could see the body moving through, but he said when the face, they turned to look right at them, he says everything just disappeared on the tape.
Oh, wow.
Wow. That's crazy. There's a big long comment here. Heidi, do you want to?
Yeah.
I can read it if you want to talk. Or
yeah. Well, yeah, we should definitely read it because it's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Okay, so Mac is talking about in 2007 at my home, my roommate called out to me telling me to look outside on my lawn were 5 to 6 turkey vultures, not unusual. I then noticed on the roof of my barn there was 11 to 12 more. Now, I grew up and lived on a farm for 40 years and never seen anything like it. I grabbed my shotgun to scare them off, and when I fired, I noticed one of them was a massive new. One of them was massive.
Oh, it was massive.
Oh, it was massive. Oh, and I
Yeah.
knew it wasn't a turkey vulture. It was about 5 feet in height with a wingspan of 14 to 15 feet. Oh, and you hit, but you shot it? Oh, but why though? But did it fly away?
Yeah,
Do
we need a little
tell.
bit more. This
Yeah, we
actually
need more
sounds like
info.
your story, Leon. It sounds like the story you told at the beginning of the show.
Right.
Where
Right.
you see like the turkey vultures and then the big,
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
Yes.
I seen. I was talking to a gentleman when I was up the Letchworth State Park in New York, and he talks about ones that were a Jesuit priest had talked about, seeing, and for 100 years, you could look at across from the falls, look at the stone, the 500 stone foot wall there, and you could see an imprint on it that was 25 foot wide. And I know still every once in a while you can pull up and you'll see people trying to go over and trying to see if they can find it again so they could retrace it. And so there was a number of places up there, where they seen that, and it was almost like it was a pictograph on the stone. And then one lady said her grandfather talked about some people that were there left a story about this bird that flew into the mountain, flew into the hill, and that left that imprint.
Wow. Wow. So same. So it's these big birds like we've seen here, you've seen there. They're everywhere, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen ones in Alaska. I know when I was up, and we've seen them in a plane.
Wow.
And
from the plane.
Yep, in a small plane, and see them flying through the trees.
I would be worried.
And when we're flying down through and we're looking, and you just kind of look at each other, and then they just disappear. I mean, they don't. Wow. They'll fly past a tree, and the tree may only be maybe 10 feet in diameter, but does not. How's it going to hide something this big?
Right.
And then just completely disappear. So
wow.
they're leaving and
otherworldly.
Transitioning in another plane.
Yeah. Wow. That's fascinating, Heidi. This is fascinating.
It is. It's really, really interesting. I know. I'm thinking because there's so much to cover, we probably need to have you on again.
Oh, I know for sure. Yeah, because we've already gone through, 40, almost 50 minutes.
It's like my two of my uncles, Jesse Cornplanter and Francis Hill, have both written books on Seneca stories and stuff. And it talks about some of the little people and some of the different things that come from some of our traditional stories. And with that, I know Bill Fenton, when he passed away, I got to meet and talk with him, and he had given me some stuff in like 1994, 95, before he had passed, and a lot of it was some of the notes and stuff that they had written down, from him doing their interviews and stuff in the in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But I know with Tonawanda, where we're at up there, we still see a lot of things that just kind of appear that you and it's one of the few places like where Letchworth is. There's been sightings of things down there, where the Seneca Army Depot is. They have what they call the Seneca ghost deer, and that's something for you to look up, because Bev Doolittle did a lot of her paintings and stuff, but the deer that were there, that lived in this area, were they're not albinos, but they're considered like a piebald, but they actually blend right into the trees with the white and the brown into the into the aspens and into the birch trees.
Wow.
And so now that the Army Depot is no longer there, it's still fenced in, but they protect them. And one of the things that we have our white deer stories, but the military and stuff, when they're there, they talked about them and how they would just appear, and they would appear and disappear. And so now you see all over the internet, people going and taking pictures and stuff of them, but they call them a Seneca ghost deer.
I love it.
Wow, that sounds cool.
But there's other animals like that that are starting to appear. I know here in Pennsylvania, in the last 6 months, they have spotted 6 different red-tailed hawks that were complete albinos.
Really?
Wow.
What do you think it means? Does it have a meaning somehow?
Well, in the Guy Wheel and in the Great Law and stuff, it talks about the Hansel Blake. They talk about the animals coming back and turning white to cleanse the human race. So
Wow.
it's supposed to be to help heal. And also they talk about, people, they're not supposed to hunt them, not supposed to shoot them. And then I've known 4 or 5 people, that shot albino deer and then had all kinds of of things happen to them.
Yeah.
And
Bad
because,
news.
we consider them, as to be protected.
Mm-hmm.
And where my place is, I've got a couple, and the neighbors, everybody watches them. Nobody shoots them.
Mm-hmm.
But we have one that we think's out of the same female. Now this deer is almost solid black. It's a
Oh.
white-tailed deer with solid black. It
Oh.
has a few white
Wow.
Wow.
markings and stuff on it.
I bet that's so cool.
Yeah, I would love to see one. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know
And
how
so-
someone could shoot an animal just because it's different like that. Like when I even see a little white squirrel and I just think it's the
Oh,
coolest
yeah.
thing ever. I'm like just happy when I see
too.
one.
Me too.
So,
Me
yeah,
too.
I don't get it.
Well,
Well, a lot of it comes to, we teach that, especially with our children and stuff, we don't have bad dreams.
mhm.
We don't have nightmares. You either have, if something is contrary, it's something that you have to work on or something going through. But if you look at a lot of these stories, look at the foundation, like with Sage Jack, this was a hunter that was abusing animals. So now he
Mhm.
comes back, as a dog man,
Mhm.
in potential, to be abused. But like I said, there's so many of these different stories all over the world, and it's not just unique to North America.
Mhm.
Right.
It's worldwide.
Wow.
Fascinating. So,
is.
yeah. So, Leon, you need to come back. We've had comments in the chat room too saying, "Oh, yes, he needs to come back." So, yeah, and maybe in a few months we'll have you back on and we'll get through the rest of the repertoire because we only got through half of it, I think, So,
And a lot of it too is I know, I see now down in Pennsylvania and New York and stuff, we see a lot more people getting more involved in the cryptid
mhm.
studies and stuff, and looking at things, and then asking questions, and then, well, I guess maybe I'm not nuts.
Mhm.
But I know, as an elder, and a lot of times, I'll have to go into places to do healings and stuff, after somebody's used tried to open up a seance or something like that, or
Mhm.
when then they call the Catholic Church in to do a exorcism or whatever, then generally I end up having to go fix it.
Mhm.
And I've
Mhm.
done that quite a few times. And I tell people, I said, it's one of the problems with Christianity is it wants to cast out, but it doesn't give them a place to go.
Right.
You can cast things out, you can put up walls, but if you don't give them a place to go, and a lot of times, these spirits, these entities, they're just lost.
Mhm.
They might be caught between, not wanting to leave their loved ones, in this plane.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, we run
Yeah.
across it all the time. So, absolutely.
And I know when I tell people, I said, well, what did you smell? And they said, what? They said, well, when you seen this, what did you smell? And they're like, they get to thinking about it. And one lady says, well, she's seen this. She couldn't think, what it was. She kept looking, is it a Sasquatch? Is it a bear or what it? And she says, but, I had this like burnt cedar smell, like
Mm.
somebody was burning cedar. And I said, well, a lot of times, you smell things before you'll see something, or something will bring in, and then she was after we got finished talking and stuff, and she says, she says, I really understand that now. And she says, I'll be sitting someplace, and he says, and I'll smell this cherry root pipe tobacco, just like her grandfather used to. Nobody's smoking, she says, but I'll smell it. And she said, it always makes her think of her grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, a lot of times, things like that happen, because people are still, entities are still here watching over. They have the bill. They're not stuck in the physical life. When they cross over, they have the ability then, to go back, to change things. We kind of look at it, was telling, like, they just had Groundhog Day down here. And we say that in traditional teachings, a lot like the movie Groundhog Day. It says, you're following that circle of life. And as it's going through and you're looking at it, you're at this point, and then this point, then this point. Well, it's kind of the same day, like he had their Groundhog Day. If you ever watch the movie, first mistake, getting it splashed with water, then wakes up the next morning and comes up, well, then he knew this car was coming. He backed up and didn't get splashed with water, but everything kept going, and every day kept being Groundhog Day. And so that's one of the things that we do when we're teaching with the younger people and stuff, teaching them that, what we do today lasts 7 generations. And so if you do good, it's there. If you do bad, it's still there. And so when you make that step doing good, you can continue, on your wheel of life. And if you make a mistake, you do bad, you get held up, and then you get back to that point. And until you correct those, that's what you need to keep moving forward.
Fascinating. Well,
It is.
Good way to end the show. I like it. That's a positive.
It is.
It's a very big positive, I think. So just keep
It
fixing it till it's positive, and then you can move on. I like
Right.
it. Well, Leon, I think we need to close out the show. It's almost to the hour point, but yeah, please, will you be on again at some point?
Yeah, that's no problem.
Awesome.
Great.
So thank you for joining us. So it's been fabulous chatting with you and meeting you, and heard a lot about you. So thank you for being on.
Yeah,
No
this
problem.
was very interesting.
Yes.
Very.
Yes, fascinating. And thank you to all of you watching live. This will, of course, stay on our YouTube channel and our Facebook channels too forever, and it will be audio in the next couple of days on our Podbean site as well.
Cool.
Yep. And yeah, thank you to our producer, Jason Trost, who is pulling us together from all different areas tonight. We're all over the place. So thank you for that. And Cryptovania TV for hosting us. We just love it here. So thank you.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Make it a good week. We will see you next week.
Hey, many hours.
Good night.